Let's do a review of the Sony Open 2023 results. Siwoo Kim is your winner. He chipped in on hole 17. It was amazing for birdie to go up by 1. No. I'm sorry, to tie. Hayden Buckley had just made a birdie on 16. 10 seconds later, Siwoo Kim makes a birdie on 17 by chipping in, which was pretty remarkable. So Siwoo ties him there. Hayden Buckley comes to 17. He does not birdie 17. 17 was pretty tough, so birdieing 17 was really good by Siwoo. While Hayden Buckley is putting on 17, Siwoo Kim tees up his tee ball like he's about to hit a driver, but pulls out a 3-wood. Imagine that. Most of you golfers out there probably be shaking in your boots to see your ball 2 inches up from the ground and hitting a 3-wood. I thought that was crazy. It was ballsy, but he's good. Siwoo was good. So he did it. He was comfortable with that shot. He did it. Put it in the bunker. Not super great. Goes on to make birdie from there. He puts that ball on the green. Makes birdie. Hayden Buckley hits his drive. Barely stays in the intermediate rough, which is that cut between the fairway and the rough. Unfortunately, hits that next shot short and right. Kind of stymies himself. It's a really hard up and down. Puts it to about 10 feet, 11 feet, something like that, and misses the putt. So Siwoo makes birdie on 18 to go up by 1. Hayden just needed to birdie that hole as well as a par 5. So, you know, and it's one of the easier holes on the golf course. Doesn't make birdie, pars it. Siwoo is your winner. Pretty amazing. That was great. It just shows you how crazy this tournament is. When we look at your optimal lineup for the 2023 Sony Open, it left $4,900 on the table. We're not doing that. Not even getting close. Your GPP winning lineup left $800 on the table. That's the first time I've seen any GPP winning lineup in the last, it feels like 6 months, that left more money on the table than $300. Because usually your GPP winning lineups use 49.7 and above. This one, 49.2. Had Siwoo, had Hayden Buckley, so 8K, 7K, another 7 in Lipsky, 9K in Taylor Montgomery, another 9K in Russell Henley, and then a $7,500 Nick Hardy. So no 10K golfer, which is kind of what I was preaching in the preview videos, that you probably want a 10K golfer this week. But when we go to the buckets, you'll see that it wasn't for certain. It wasn't an anchor bucket. We went over that in the strategy video. 10K golfer or the 10K range was not an anchor type of play. So again, we'll go over that here shortly. A more realistic lineup. So that GPP winning lineup scored 610.5 points. Your optimal lineup scored 677. So there's 67 points roughly between the two. Your realistic lineup would have scored 629.5. Now, realistic to me is actually, I should call this the sweet spot lineup. So let's do that. Sweet spot lineup. And what I mean by that is if I pull up the optimizer, where's it going to go? Right in the middle. So pull up the optimizer. I put in everyone's DK points as the metric. So let me zoom in. Put their finishing points right here. I hit run optimize with all of the conditionals in. When I don't put the conditionals in, it still looks at the Marquee Tee Times, because that obviously gets put into the optimizer. But if I put all these conditionals in as I had it before, what I like to do to try to determine success with the bucket system is to see if we follow the buckets strictly, find the best performing golfers to follow this criteria to see what points they score, to see if we would have taken down a GPP. Scored 629.5 points. So this one's different than what I have on the screen, I believe. Oh, no. This is that lineup. Okay, good. I was kind of messing around with it. I wasn't sure which one I saved. But you would leave $600 on the table. It would have scored 629.5 points. I have that all highlighted in green here. This was using, actually, it's not using a 10K golfer, but we start with a 9K, we go to 2 8s, and then fill it in with 3 7s. So like it's your 6 golfers, leave $600 on the table. We score 629 points. The GPP winning lineup scored 610. So we could have taken down a GPP following the sweet spot process. We're still pretty far behind with the optimal lineup. But again, the whole goal of trying to hit the optimal lineup is to aim small. That way we miss small. If we miss the optimal lineup, chances are we're going to hit the GPP winning lineup, which we would have done, obviously, if we would have picked the right golfers. Now, personally, for me, I chose nothing but 10, like to start my lineups with 10K golfers. I think I left like maybe 5% of my lineups to be built outside of 10Ks. So I started with the 9K golfers. Believe it or not, oh, well, not so much believe it or not, those are my only 6 out of 6 cuts made. I did play Hideki Matsuyama in some of my lineups, and he was the only 10K golfer to make the cut. But the only ones that I had 6 of 6 through the cut were the ones that started in the 9K range, which is obviously what you should have done here. It's very infrequent that your optimal lineup or your GPP winning lineup doesn't have a 10K golfer in it. So this is more of an anomaly. I wouldn't use this going forward and saying, aha, see, I knew 9Ks were going to, finally, or 9 and 8Ks, a more conservative build, a more balanced build was going to, it's always better no matter what. And that's what you should go with. No, not when it comes to winning in GPP. So, sure, in this one, yeah, okay. I'll concede. We've got one tournament over the last 70 that used all 9Ks, or not all 9Ks, but started in the 9K range. Hold on. Started outside the 10K range. That's a better way to put it. Wow. Great percentages there. Anyways, moving on to the bucket system, just to show you how well the buckets did. Now, I have this column over here that's called success. This tells you whether or not that bucket was successful for this year. So we see a bunch of no's on here, but I'm going to put a filter on this because we have to get rid of the recent form buckets, which you see one of the no's. Go ahead and do that. We have our anchor buckets in there right now. By the way, as you can see, salaries, no 10K golfer. So what an anchor means is you want to play a golfer from that bucket. You can see 2 misses right here, which I think we can probably talk about. I think, yeah, we'll talk about this. So let me remove these filters. I forgot I even had them on here. Okay. And recent form bucket is removed. So we had a total of 30 buckets in total. Because again, we removed the recent form buckets. That's 6 out of the 36. Now we have 30 left. 4 of them failed. 4 of the buckets failed. And they failed for different reasons. The course history 5 bucket, which were missed cuts and withdrawals. If that's what you average, that's what bucket you go into. I had 0 to 1 finishing inside the top 10. That was my projection. Now I could cheese this and say, well, my conservative projection over here, you can see it says 1.17. We always round up, so it goes to 2. There were 2 golfers in the top 10 from that bucket, as well as 2 in the optimal lineup. As long as that number doesn't exceed or fall under my projections, it's a success. So technically, this did succeed. Also, technically, I could still build a lineup and win a GPP. As you can see with the Sweet Spot Optimal, the one that I built, I used 0 of these golfers and still took down a GPP, theoretically or hypothetically. Theoretically. So it still works out. Either way, this bucket, I would say, was a success. I shouldn't even so much say success. It just wasn't needed to win a GPP. Last week 1s, last week 2s. This is your contentious position this last week. Do you want to play someone who played at the Tournament of Champions? And if so, how well did you want them to finish there? Because obviously I keep track of that. So I have your top 20 finishers, as well as your 20 to 40 finishers. So you can see they're both anchor buckets. You want at least one of these golfers. So let's take a look at the 2023 leaderboard. We're looking for recent form, or last week 1s and 2s. Well, I have Corey Connors down here, who is a last week 1. I also have JJ Spawn. Both of them finished 12th. Now, Adam Scott was a last week 2. He finished 21st, as well as JT Poston. Now, what does that mean to you? Well, first of all, some of these guys scored more points. Like Adam Scott scored 92.5 points. He scored more points than Nick Taylor. He actually tied Maverick McNeely, and he had more than Aaron Baddeley as well as Matt Kuchar. who all finished inside the top 10 for results. So this is kind of an evolution here with the bucket system. I used to just look at top 10 finishers, just their finishing position. Now we got to bring in DraftKings points because that's what really matters. Can we still win a GPP? Well, if I used Adam Scott and I used Corey Connors in my lineups, yeah, I could have taken down a GPP. They would have fit in those buckets. And also another thing to point out, Corey Connors finished 12 under. He had a really short putt on 17 that he could have made for birdie. Obviously, he's really bad at putting, so, you know, that's a moot point. Could have finished inside the top 10. Adam Scott, I think, also parred full 18. Where is that? Where is Mr. Scott? These guys were 2 shots away from finishing inside the top 10. So again, I look at the top 10. I judge everything based off of guys finishing inside the top 10. These guys were, well, Corey was 1 shot away from being inside the top 10. Adam Scott was 2 shots away from being inside the top 10. Those guys would have fulfilled those buckets. So again, I could say this was a success. I'm not going to, because that, you know, I think if I'm projecting somewhere between 1 to 3, and then also my conservative number is 3.04, like my max projection, which means 4, I'm looking at somewhere between 1 to 4 golfers from that bucket to finish inside the top 10. Well, last week ones, I guess I did have 2 that were really close. They're 1 shot away. KH Lee finished a few strokes away from top 10 as well. It didn't work out. Let's face it. It didn't work out. They weren't successful. Still a high success percentage when it comes to the buckets hitting. And then our last year 2s, I projected somewhere between 0 to 2. Minimum projection, we look at our max conservative projection. This really should say yes. I don't know why it doesn't, because I know why it doesn't. I'm not taking these numbers into account right now. I'm just looking at our min and our max. Usually I want a 2-point buffer no matter what, so I'd always read this as 0 to 2, although this right now says 0 to 1, round down with the minimums, round up with the maximums. Which means it doesn't matter if you use the optimal lineup or the sweet spot optimal, this bucket was successful. So what I'm trying to say is very close to being 100% successful with these buckets. I'm not going to take victories for these 2 buckets. Course history 5s, yeah, probably won't take, well, if I start using my conservative max projections, I think I've seen enough where I think I should. This is taking in the sweet spot rankings and then applying them to the buckets for each of the golfers that represent that bucket. To me, I think using my sweet spot score is probably the best way to do it, because currently I'm just looking at OWGR as well as like the success rate for each of those buckets and how many golfers are in each of those buckets. So that's how I'm kind of providing my projections. I should probably use the sweet spot score because I really like my scoring system when it comes to ranking players. So that is your review of the Sony Open. Bucket system did pretty darn well. We didn't have a 10K golfer finish inside the top 10. I thought we would, but you can see this isn't an anchor bucket. It max projections 2. And remember, if this number isn't over 2, then our minimum automatically goes down to 0. So we had 0 inside the top 10. One guy only made the cut. It was kind of a weak 10K range. I mean, like Tom Kim, obviously a really good golfer. I wouldn't say so much like it was weak because of him. We had Tom Kim, we had Jordan Spieth, who's just extremely volatile, was leading the event after round 1, and then just blows up, shoots +5. So did Rory Sabatini, by the way, which I wouldn't make those comparisons and really have it mean anything, but that course was somewhat tricky. I don't understand what really happened. I think Spieth just said he just hit a couple bad shots, and that's what led to everything, plus he had a cold putter. But yeah, I guess I could take his word for that. I thought he was a really good play. I played him in most of my lineups. And I had some really good lineups with him and Montgomery. I started those 2 guys together with Adam Scott sprinkled in there. I also had Taylor Montgomery sprinkled in there. Not Taylor Montgomery, I'm sorry. I already said his name. So Adam Scott and KH Lee. I was really, oh man, after Thursday's round, I'm like, this could be the week. Could be the week. And of course, you say that too soon, you get screwed. So unfortunately, it didn't work out. but it was fun nonetheless. Again, I think the bucket system did pretty well. Now the Marquee Tee Times, I did say that was the end of the review. I forgot. We need to look at the Marquee Tee Times. So just to show you this really quickly, I group rank these based off of their sweet spot score. Your top group is ranked number 1, your next group, so on and so forth, 2, 3, 4, that kind of stuff. There are 9 total Marquee Tee Times, really 7, quote unquote, total. What we're looking to see here is at least 2 guys in the optimal lineup from the Marquee Tee Times. We see 0. I think this is the 3rd time this has happened over the last 70, 80 weeks. I have to actually keep track. I should keep track. That we didn't have anyone from the Marquee Tee Times finish in the optimal lineup. So it was, yeah, I guess overall, it was kind of a failed week for the sweet spot process. We did have 2 guys, though, that would have taken down a GPP if we would have went with Adam Scott as well as Matt Kuchar. So we could still grab 2 guys and win a GPP. So I guess, yeah, let me pick myself back up. We could still win a GPP, which means we would have, we would win if we'd have selected those 2 golfers as our golfers to anchor around, which we're not doing. Like, I'm not going to pretend. We're not picking those guys. But I think Corey Connors is in here, I'd imagine. Maybe not. I don't see him. I guess not. Really? Yeah, Corey Connors not in the not in the Marquee Tee Time. Okay. I mean, that's how it goes sometimes. So Russell Henley would have been your top 9K. But yeah, I'm not building lineups starting with Adam Scott and Matt Kuchar. Like, I'm not anchoring my lineups there. I'm grabbing a 10K golfer that I see in here, or maybe one of the higher 9Ks that I like, and starting there. So obviously we can't do it with Sung Jae. The only 10K you could have done it with was Hideki. I'm not doing that. Like, I'm gonna be real with you. I'll just say the Marquee Tee Times failed. We could have grabbed 3 golfers, I suppose. And Adam Scott and Kuchar could have been them, or could have been 2 of them, and then we just grab a 9K somewhere down here that didn't miss the cut. Okay. Yeah, it doesn't work out. We're not getting there. I'm not even going to try to, like, because I personally, one of the rules of the Marquee Tee Times is don't select more than, well, first of all, don't select more than 2 golfers from a group, but really just try to stick to 1 golfer from a group. So if I'm going with Adam Scott, I'm not choosing Hideki Matsuyama. Same goes with Matt Kuchar. If I play Matt Kuchar, I'm not selecting Hoagie or Russell Henley. So then when we look at the rest of the 10 and 9Ks in these anchor buckets, or not anchor buckets, the Marquee Tee Times, none of them even made the cut. So yeah, Marquee Tee Times failed this last week. That's a bummer. Again, percentage is low overall. I'm just going to, just move on. Keep with the process, move on. There we go. Now that is the end of the review.